It's Friday night. It's the preview show. It's the No Nay Never podcast.
Hello and welcome to the preview show brought to you by the No Nay Never podcast. I'm your host Natalie Bromley, but joining me is the main man himself, the headliner of the preview show, Dave Statman Roberts. Dave, how are you, sir?
Hello, Natalie. I'm very well, and we have a guest with us this week as well.
We do. This is getting into a bit of a regular habit. Our little cosy little preview show families keeps being interrupted by No Nay Never team members. We have got, it's not Tom this time, it's young George. George, welcome. Preview show debut.
Evening to you both. I know I feel like I've infiltrated something new here.
You have.
I've jumped ship from the main podcast.
It's what it is. That's true now. I think that's probably by the end of the season we'll get cameos by all of Team None and everyone here. We have got George on again because, and I'm sure regular listeners will forgive us from this, none of us at all had the appetite, quite frankly, to record an hour-long analysis of the West Brom game. It was a very difficult watch, and it was a difficult result to take in many respects as well. And I think what we decided to do instead was doing a little bit of a merger again, like we have been doing, and get George on to talk about some initial reaction to that West Brom game as we look ahead to the next Premier League fixture. But before we do that, we of course have a quiz question that we need to give you an answer to. At the end of the West Brom preview show, Dave asked you, Burnley's last league win over West Brom at Turf Moor was in a championship game in August 2007. But who scored the winning goal with a second half penalty? Now, George, without giving the answer away, did you know this?
Yeah, so spoilers. I looked at the question just before we started recording, and I racked my brain back, and I'm remembering because it was just before, like a season or two before, I could have a regular season ticket. So I remember all I used to do is like refresh BBC Sport, and there's always a certain player who used to just bag for fun in those days.
There was.
And it was that player.
Dave, who was it?
The correct answer, which George did get right, and also you, with a bit of prompting, got right when we did it after the show. Andy Gray was the correct answer.
Indeed. Dave, you always seem to completely drop me in it. I always like, can you just lie to our listeners and say, yeah, Bromley got it first time?
They wouldn't believe me.
Bromley got it after 45 guesses when she'd gone through the entire team. Who out of our listeners did get the answers right then, Dave?
Well, we had correct answers from Adrian Caton, Stan Hill Claret, David Entwistle, and also John Robertson, and they all managed to avoid the little red herring we'd thrown in there because Burnley did sign Graham Alexander shortly after this match, and he'd gone to become the club's regular penalty taker. So if anyone else got that right and avoided the red herring, then well done.
I know, Dave trying to sneak in some little crazy stats there. But yeah, that was a good question, and well done to everybody who got it right. Now, of course, we are going to be giving you another quiz question at the end of this previous show, so hang fire, listen in, and Dave will let us know what he's going to set us for this week's homework. But before we go on to talk about where we're here for previewing next fixture, George, let's start with you. Where do we start with that West Brom game? Pretty disappointing afternoon all round, really. I know you were particularly deflated by the end of that game.
Yeah, I think you just sometimes you have to separate the match from the rest of the season, because just in terms of the match alone, you just watch it and you're against a team in a relegation zone, and you're against 10 men, and you're just thinking, we really should be winning this. So it was just such a disappointing performance to watch, and it was really lackluster, to be honest. But then obviously as the weekend passes and you sort of think about it and you look at the table again, it becomes an okay result. In the grand scheme of things, it's not the end of the world.
Do you think it is an okay result? Because I'll tell you for why, and this is what's bothering me a little bit about this point. A couple of games ago, we were 11 points clear of relegation, and we were looking relatively comfortable. And we had two home games, one against West Brom and one against Fulham back to back, both of whom are really struggling and look to the world on paper that they're going to go down. And we got 2 points out of a possible 6. And actually, if you throw Brighton into the mix as well, that's 3 points out of a possible 9 at home. And George, we've got 5 really horrible fixtures coming up now, and I'm not entirely sure that a draw was enough.
Yeah, it was nice back then when we'd beaten Liverpool, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Those were some good days, and everything was optimistic. But no, I get where you're coming from, and there is some worrying fixtures coming up. And at the end of the day, we should have been beating teams like Fulham, West Brom, Brighton, but we haven't. And we're now in a situation where we're sort of looking over our shoulders, and the Fulham result wasn't a good one. But I have a real confidence that with Dice, we just won't go down again. Like, unless things get really bad with the squad, which, they were coming to, and that's why we changed owners. But I just have a confidence. We pick up a couple of odd results here and there. I'm sure we'll be fine at the end of the day, and every point's important. So better to get the 1 point than, concede a silly late goal or something against West Brom.
Yeah, I get that. I do completely get that, George. And I think that's the main thing, I think some of the things that we've talked about was just making sure that we didn't just go too silly and end up losing the game. But the gap's down to 6 points. And if Fulham manage to get themselves a couple of wins and we've got these horrific games, I'm not entirely sure that we're going to do it. Dave, I guess if we take the assumption that this Burnley side always seem to get themselves some bonus points from somewhere, out of the next 5 fixtures, can you identify any of them games where you think we might pick up the bonus win or a bonus draw?
It's going to be tough. Well, come to it. We're going to have a tough game on Sunday against Spurs, and we know that the run of games is a tough one. We've got Arsenal, who we've beaten Arsenal down there. Why can't we go and get a win against Turf Moor? It's been a while since we've beaten them there. I think we're going to get a win and a draw from somewhere. Certainly these next 4 games. If we get 4
Who
points
from though? Who from? Come on, I'm gonna hold you to this because I think your suspicions are right, Dave. I think we'll get a bonus point, but I'm going to pin you down to what game you think we'll get in. Do you need a refresher to what games we've got?
No, I knew we're playing, but yeah, refresh everyone else's memory.
Yeah, just bear with me a second. So we have got in the next game. So we've got Spurs coming up next.
Tottenham,
we've got Spurs
Leicester,
away,
Arsenal.
Yeah, Leicester at home. Then we've got crikey, what's going on here? My thing's just collapsed. It's taking me to Google Maps. This is not what we want. Google, I want Burnley fixtures. I don't want Google Maps. What are you doing? So yeah, we've got Spurs, which I don't think we'll get anything. Leicester at home. That's. Do you think we'll get anything from that, Dave?
I think we might get a point. Yeah.
So you think Leicester's a point, and then we've got who else have we got coming up?
Arsenal at home, and then Everton away.
Okay, Arsenal at home might be one. Okay, I'll give you that one. So if we maybe look at Leicester and Arsenal, that would be fine. But again, George, the problem is, and what we're worried about here is the goals again. Like, we never really looked like we were going to breach either Fulham or certainly Fulham we did once, but certainly not West Brom's. We never really looked like we were scoring, and it feels horrendous. And we've got more and more injuries again. I'm not feeling as warm and comfortable as you lot are that we're going to survive.
Yeah, on them fixtures, I think we'll beat Leicester. I think we'll definitely, being at home as well. They've just lost in the Europa League, I believe, tonight. They've been on good form all season, but at some point they have to stumble. Yeah. Perhaps now this could be their sort of period. I think that the scoring thing's always been an issue when we've been in the Premier League. And we always say it, but at the end of the day, we always find a result here and there. Like the Crystal Palace away, 3-0. Who would have predicted that before the game?
That's true.
And yet we pulled it out of the bag. And maybe these run of fixtures, we were never going to score a lot against them anyway. So if we can keep it tight for these fixtures, grab the odd result, and get the injured players back for when we've got the likes of Newcastle and Southampton after these run of games.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe if we were to have players injured, this would be the block where get it out the way now and then bring them back for the games we really have to win.
Yeah, and I guess we've still got to play Fulham again before the end of the season, and we have got some winnable games towards the end of the season. And I think, Dave, you'll obviously have a handle on this as well. It's all very well worrying about our next 5 fixtures, but Fulham's particular, their fixture list's horrific, isn't it?
They've won a couple of games now, and that's helped them out. But they'd only won a couple of games in total before then, so I don't think they're going to miraculously turn into Manchester City overnight, are they? So
True.
There is that. You can't, psychologically, when they win a couple of games and the gaps close, then you're tense. But I'm not sure that's going to continue. I'm very surprised if that continues.
Yeah, well, we'll see where we get to with that. I guess final thoughts from you, George. I guess the sending off particularly, do you think, I know we talked about this before we went on, do you think if that's, I personally thought the sending off was a little bit harsh. I know, Dave, you were very clear with this before we went on air, that it is a red card by the letter of the law. I'm not entirely sure I want that to be a red card. I think a booking's probably enough. But George, do you think that sending off maybe was a detriment to the game rather than helping us? Do you think we'd have won if they'd have had 11?
I think, yeah, for sure, to be honest, because I think over the past few years we've got a track record of not performing too well against 10 men. And I think it was really a game where with 11v11 it had been a good contest, but when they went down to 10, it just gave them all the excuse they needed to really sit back and really become compact rather than go for the win. So it probably did, serve as a detriment to our chances of winning. But I was glad to see Dyche come out after the game and say we were rubbish, essentially.
Tarky did as
it's just
well.
one of them days. Yeah. Yeah, exactly, both of them. So both Tarks and Dyche came out and were proper honest about it, which you don't always see. No. So hopefully we'll see a reaction from the players at the weekend now after that.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Like I say, provided that we can get some players back.
Opposition stats.
Well, let's have a look at that game then of the weekend, Dave, and let's dive straight into the preview show, because that is, of course, what we are here for. We're here to have a look at the next one. Let's forget about what's in the past, because we can't do anything about that now, and let's look ahead. And we are, of course, previewing Tottenham Hotspur away from home, which is on Sunday, the 28th of February, 2 p.m. kickoff, live on Sky Sports. Dave, why don't you kick us off with giving us the recent history of this fixture?
Burnley have travelled to play an away fixture against Spurs on 7 occasions since our promotion to the Premier League in 2009. 6 of those were Premier League games, and there was also an FA Cup third round replay in 2015. We've yet to come away with a win in any of those recent meetings, and as well as losing that FA Cup replay in 2015, we've lost 5 of the 6 Premier League games and drawn just 1 of them. These matches have taken place at 3 different places: White Hart Lane, at Wembley Stadium, and also Wembley Stadium when the new stadium construction was taking place in its later phases, and then more recently at the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Our only point in these recent games was at Wembley. That was in August 2017, when new signing Chris Wood came off the bench to score a late equaliser. That match finished 1-1. Last season's meeting is mentioned in our next section, and you won't need more than one guess to know whether it was the highlight or the lowlight.
Definitely, yeah. I've got a funny feeling that this is not going to be that comfortable a preview show.
Highlights and lowlights.
Well, why don't we delve straight into that section then, Dave, and let's start with that lowlight. Come on, hit us with it.
We thought we'd get the low light out of the way first again this week, as we have been doing recently. There have been 2 recent 5-0 defeats to choose from our Premier League visits to play Spurs. And although the heavy defeat in September 2009 was a harsh lesson early in our very first Premier League campaign, we've chosen last season's meeting, which was also a 5-0 defeat, and one which was definitely an off day for the Clarets. Heung-min Son's goal may have been a memorable one for Spurs fans, winning the Puskas Award for Goal of the Year as well as the BBC's Goal of the Season. But to be honest, it was one we prefer to forget, as a succession of Burnley players allowed him to continue to run from the edge of his own box past most of the Burnley team and all the way into the opposition box, before finishing with a shot past Nick Pope. That was the 3rd goal, after efforts by Kane and Moura, and with further goals from Kane and Sissoko, it was a definite low light of the season, or indeed of recent times.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's get a bit cheerier then, Dave. What do we have a highlight? Is there anything we can put in here?
We do. We've had to go back a little bit further for it. Back in the 1980s, the Milk Marketing Board decided to raise its profile and try to sell more white stuff by sponsoring the League Cup between 1981 and 1986. Burnley had been promoted as Division 3 champions in the 1981-82 season. And despite a torrid league campaign back in the 2nd Division, there were a couple of very successful cup runs. As well as reaching the quarter-finals of the FA Cup, we went one better and made it to the semi-finals of the League Cup, following a remarkable victory against Spurs at White Hart Lane in the Milk Cup quarter-final. The match was goalless at half-time, but Spurs took the lead shortly after the break. However, Burnley, who had sacked Brian Miller immediately prior to this match and put Frank Casper in temporary charge, stormed back to gain the victory. The equaliser was an own goal by Graham Roberts in the 65th minute. And 10 minutes later, the home side were lucky that goalkeeper Ray Clements wasn't sent off for a deliberate handball when he was way outside his box. But from the resulting free kick, the ball was played in for Billy Hamilton to poke a shot in from close range. There was still time for another Graham Roberts own goal and another from Hamilton to complete a memorable 4-1 victory.
Good stuff. And it doesn't surprise me that we had to go back quite as far as we did there, Dave, to get a highlighter. Certainly, my recent times watching Spurs haven't been that good.
Fixture Flashback.
Well, we'll move now on to our first of our new features for the second half of this season. Is, of course, the tongue twister that young Dave likes to hit me with. It's our Fixture Flashback feature. Every week I trip over my words. Fixture Flashback, and this is your chance to get involved in the preview show. Now, Dave, talk us through this section.
Each week we're asking you to send us your matchday memories from a particular game from the past against our next opponents, so that we can feature them on the relevant preview show. Ideally, we'd like you to record your thoughts and send them through to us, but if you don't feel comfortable doing that, we'll also take written submissions and read them out. But thankfully for this week, we do have a memory of a match at White Hart Lane in the 70s, and we had a recording through, which we can listen to now.
Hi, my name is Jan Gedzielewski, and I have supported the Clarets for over 60 years. My memory goes back to October 1974. A group of us went down to White Hart Lane to watch a First Division game. We stood in the paddock overlooking the halfway line and got on well with the Spurs fans in that area. The game itself was a cracker. Burnley surged into a 2-goal lead, but 2 quick-fire goals near the end levelled it up for Spurs. Just after the equaliser, with about 10 minutes left, the stewards opened all the exit gates. This prompted the hooligan Spurs fans behind the goals to our right to rush out of the ground and storm our paddock, looking for Burnley fans and trouble. My friends scarpered, but as I had no Burnley markings, I just moved out of the way and continued to watch the game. My reward was a thrilling last-minute winner by Leighton James. I resisted the urge to celebrate, but a few minutes later, I left White Hart Lane with a big smile on my face.
Good stuff. What a fantastic recording that was, Dave. That is exactly what we were looking for.
Yeah, spot on. I think that's really good to get a memory like that, and if we can get one of those like that for the rest of the season, that'll be brilliant.
I love it. Left White Hart Lane with a smile on my face. There's not many fans that can say that, do they, Dave? I'm afraid. It really is. So why don't you give our listeners a quick refresher as to what they can do to submit their memories, please?
Our next preview show will be for our home game against Leicester City. So if you have any memories of past matches at Turf Moor against the Foxes, been a couple of memorable ones in recent times and a few more going further back, then please do get in touch to share them with us. We can accept written submissions, although we particularly like it when we receive the recordings, so we can hear it directly from you. Please get in touch in the usual way by dropping us an email, podcast@knownaynever.net. And we have mentioned it before, but the easiest website to use to make a recording and send us a link of the audio is vocaroo.com. I'll spell that, VOCAROO.com. It's free to use. There's no registration required. I actually used it myself. I did a preview for a Spurs podcast this week, and I used that, and it was really straightforward to use. So I can definitely recommend that one. Or obviously you can make an own recording if you've got apps on your phone or on your laptop or whatever to do. But it's a really easy way of doing it if you're not quite as confident.
Yeah, definitely. Do get involved. I think when somebody does have a memory like that, I think it's absolutely superb. And we're dying to hear about what everybody has to say about some good old Burnley games.
Heroes and villains.
And moving then on to my favourite section of the preview show, Dave, our heroes and villains section. Who is our hero for this fixture?
We always welcome feedback and suggestions here at No Nay Never. And in our last preview show, we asked again if there are any prime Of course we do. We asked if there are any prime candidates for hero or villain for this match. A list of all our heroes and villains for the season to date was also compiled and posted on social media. And it's fair to say we did receive some interesting suggestions. However, from all the suggestions we received, we've gone back to the game we chose as our highlight this week, and we've selected a player who scored 2 of the goals. At this point, I should clarify something, as there was a mischievous, or maybe it was a serious, suggestion that Spurs defender Graham Roberts, who scored 2 own goals in that game, should have been the hero. However, we couldn't possibly have an opposition player as a hero, could we?
No.
So, no. Oh, maybe. You never know. Don't never say never. But we've decided this time that Billy Hamilton, who scored Burnley's other 2 goals in that match, should be our hero for this week. And there he is. We've got a picture here. It's not very good for listeners, but we've got a picture of him wearing that fantastic all-yellow away kit with his socks rolled down, running away, celebrating a goal.
I love it. I think I was talking about this when the last time we played away from home. I think if I ever found myself owning Burnley Football Club, I would make it a law that we always played in yellow. It's just a dream. What's your favourite away kit, George?
The yellow kits are absolutely stunning. Do you remember the one in, I think it was 2007, where you've got the yellow and then you've got the claret strip across the chest, just a one band. That was absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think if I had my way, I'd have always a yellow away kit and that beautiful forest green third kit that they did for the environmental one. That for me was a dream. Oh, there we go. Let us know what your favourite shirts are, listeners, because it's definitely yellow for me. But then, who've we got, Dave? I still need some jazzy soundtrack for this. Who've you got as our villain?
Well,
still
once
not
again,
letting me have that, are you?
no. I think Matt can do better in post-production on that, to be fair. Once again, our listeners didn't disappoint us in their suggestions for our next villain. Although I originally had one name in mind, I eventually changed my mind and went with one of the listener suggestions instead. So, instead of the striker, who scored 4 goals in Spurs' 5-0 win in 2009, which was Robbie Keane, we selected the player who received a straight red card in an off-the-ball incident involving Les Thompson during the League Cup game which was played at White Hart Lane in October 1993. That player was Spurs midfielder Darren Caskey, who, for careless use of his elbows, is our villain for this week.
Ooh, good stuff. Yeah, boom. Then finally, Dave, who is taking control of the game? Who is going to be our referee?
Well, this week's referee is someone we've seen in the middle for 2 matches already this season. They were both matches at Turf Moor and both finished 1-0. In November, Burnley beat Crystal Palace 1-0, but then we lost to Manchester United by the same scoreline just last month. And the referee for both those games was Leicester-based official Kevin Friend. The last time he took charge of one of Burnley's away games was last season. That was late last season against Norwich City. And with the help of VAR reviews, he sent off 2 Norwich players in a game that Burnley eventually won 2-0. Kevin Friend is an experienced official and he'll be celebrating his 50th birthday in July of this year. He took charge of his first Burnley game as long ago as 2005, but perhaps the most remarkable one was Burnley's 4-3 comeback win against Preston North End in September 2010. There'll be another very experienced official as the video assistant referee for this weekend's game, and that's Martin Atkinson.
Good stuff. I like it.
Statman Dave's Stat of the Week.
Now, we're not going to leave it there, Dave, because I know that you like to treat our listeners. So why don't you delve deep into the bank of stats and let us have your miscellaneous Stat of the Week?
Yeah, well, this week's Stat of the Week relates to last weekend's result against West Bromwich Albion. Some of you may have remembered that Burnley played out 2 goalless draws in both league games against Brighton in 2017-18, as well as repeating the feat against Huddersfield Town in the same season. However, one of the advantages of having access to a database of all past match results is that it was a relatively simple task to discover how many other occasions this has happened in the past. So, the answer to that question is that the pair of goalless league games with West Brom this season was only the 15th time this has happened in Burnley's history, and only the 5th time since the new millennium. The other recent times, in addition to the 3 I've already mentioned, were against Leicester City and Reading, and they were both in the 2004-05 season.
Good stats. Well, before we have a look into this game in more detail with the panel, we do want to have a quick word with our travelling supporters who won't be travelling. Well, actually, no, we're the travelling supporters. We're away, aren't we? Our opposition supporters, shall we say. And we spoke this week to Ricky from the Last Word on Spurs to get his thoughts ahead of this fixture.
Opposition View.
Hello there, this is Ricky Sachs here from the Last Word on Spurs. I hope you guys are keeping safe and well. I'm giving you my preview ahead of Burnley to come at the weekend for Spurs. Won't be an easy game. Never is, to be honest with you, when you face Burnley. Always a tough and tricky opposition. And to be fair, Spurs in the form they're in at the moment, very difficult to know what kind of Tottenham team is going to turn up. I think it's fair to say it's been a difficult watch for Tottenham at times. Like I say, recently under Jose Mourinho. The last few weeks we have seen, to be fair, I would say a change in style, a change in dimension. The shackles have come off, players have been allowed to play, but it hasn't seen really results flourish in the Premier League. Obviously that win against West Brom, our last win at the moment. We obviously got beaten by Manchester City. We also lost to West Ham. So Spurs really in desperate need of 3 points against Burnley. And it won't be easy. I think Sean Dyche always sets up his teams to be organised, disciplined. I mean, we saw in the reverse fixture Spurs very, very lucky to come away with a win against Burnley. You know, we have to say at the time, Spurs were flying high, top of the Premier League, looking in really, really good form. Almost a matter of if Spurs could compete for the title rather than if they'll make top four. How those times have changed. Spurs mid-table and really at the moment floundering. I have to say, you know, our position in the league simply not good enough for a club of Tottenham Hotspur standards when it's being managed by one of the greatest managers we've seen in the world in Jose Mourinho, and results simply haven't gone our way recently. Again, there's been speculation about the manager, whether he's capable enough, whether he's good enough now to lead Spurs through this rocky period. It's been no, obviously, surprise with Jose that he's fallen out with certain players, the likes of Dele Alli, dare I say Gareth Bale. We've seen in the past Tunji and Ndombele, players not being favoured as much, the likes of Harry Winks, Musa Sissoko. And I think now what you're trying to see is Mourinho really trying hard to rally the troops back on side. The Europa League for Tottenham has been a real welcome relief. I think, like I say, the win on Wednesday for Spurs will give them, you know, a real good comfort to think, you know, they look at Bale, look at Dele, the impact they're making on the team. Spurs need to use those players now at the weekend. There'll be question marks whether Dele Alli will play. Obviously, he's played, again, pretty much a full 90 against Wolfsberger. So I'll be interested to see if Dele does play this game. Gareth Bale, on the other hand, Gareth, it's a tricky one. You know, you'd love to see Gareth start at the weekend. Potentially, that's what we're hoping. Obviously, he didn't start the game against Wolfsberger, so maybe, like I say, the plan will be to see Gareth Bale finally start for Tottenham in the Premier League. It's only been a flurry of appearances for Gareth, really, in the Premier League. Not really been given his opportunity to prove his worth. It's been difficult, I think, to say the least, in terms of how that season-long loan has worked out so far. Of course, Tottenham fans, all of us, we want it to work so much with Gareth Bale. We really, truly do. So we're hoping and praying that Gareth Bale, we're in the part of a second renaissance now where he can lift himself and Spurs can lift themselves, really, because you look at the game against Burnley at the weekend, simply only a win is good enough for Tottenham. Simply only a win is good enough. You know, you cannot afford to step up to Burnley if you've got any hopes of top 6 aspirations, let alone top 4. Spurs, I think, now have to go step by step, very, very slowly, and try and just get back to winning games in the Premier League. It's been such a long time since Spurs are winning that almost now it's like they forgot to win in the Premier League. So the key now will be Spurs to get back to winning ways, get that win against Burnley. I think, again, Mourinho, like we've seen recently, will shuffle his pack. I would expect to see Toby Alderweireld play, hopefully, this game. You know, Spurs at the moment, the problem we've got is that we chop and change the back four on so many occasions where there isn't that fluidity, there's not that consistency that has led to a stable back four in order to get results. I mean, I think you can guarantee Harry Kane, Heung-min Son will be starting. Apart from that, maybe you'd say Tunji and Ndombele as well. The Spurs team, and I've got to say Højbjerg as well, will be in that starting lineup. Apart from that, generally, I think that is the main concern, that for Spurs, they need to have a settled 11. They need to, like I say, approach the game with a forefront thinking of how to win it. No good sitting back. Go to win the game, and fingers crossed Tottenham can do that. So I'm going to go over 2-1 Tottenham win, and hopefully, fingers crossed, Tottenham will get over the line. But like I say, guys, best of luck for the rest of the season, and hope, like I say, you guys finish well.
So, George, thoughts ahead of the match? Spurs away. Not normally one that we can expect to get a result.
No, and to be honest, we've still got PTSD from that 5-0 drubbing where I was just cold and miserable.
That was
That
horrible.
wasn't a pleasant
it was
experience
so horrible.
at all.
So horrible.
But that being said, I have got a bit of hope because Spurs are in a bit of a crisis right now, and we love a team in a crisis.
True.
We've beaten Arsenal this season, Liverpool, who were both. I mean, Liverpool weren't going through a crisis. We sort of started that, but definitely Arsenal. So I think if there's a time to play Tottenham, it probably is around about now. And I think, especially coming off our run of form as well, which has been mediocre, we'll certainly be hoping to come out the blocks firing, especially with the words that Talks and Dyche said after the West Brom game. So you'd hope to see a bit of a bit more gutsier performance at the weekend. And I think if it's one of them. If we get an early goal, you never know if we can hang on to that. And even a draw would obviously be a bonus result at the weekend.
So I guess that's the one thing that we want from these players, isn't it, George? And I think that's something that for me was lacking a little bit against West Brom, is that sometimes you're going to get outclassed by a team and sometimes you can't expect to win at all. But as long as they put some effort in, so I think the minimum that I expect from the weekend is a real performance of some grit and determination, and at least to see them give 100% effort. I'll be really annoyed if they sort of like roll over.
Yeah, definitely. That's all you can expect, really. I think the West Brom game, they just everyone just seemed a bit cream crackered, really, and they just couldn't get about the pitch as well, and there wasn't any sort of fight to try and win the game. Whereas this weekend going to a big side, that's the minimum that'll be expected, is a good shift. I mean, one of my favourite players, Martin Patterson, he wasn't the best player in the world, but he just used to absolutely run defenders ragged. I remember people used to just call him like a terrier, and that's exactly what he was like. So that's the sort of minimum expectation of the players, and then anything beyond that, let's hope we can nab a goal here and keep a clean sheet, and maybe come away with all 3 points.
No, I like your confidence, George. Dave, on that line, do you think there is any chance of any 3 points, or there's no way you're predicting a win when I ask you what the score is? No way.
I'm not predicting a win. No, I've got to go with. I did the preview for the Last Word on Spurs as well. So,
you did. Sorry, I meant to make.
They asked for a prediction, so I'm going to have to go with the same I went on there. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I think that it is a good, like George said, it's a good time to play Spurs. I think, although they did win in Europe in midweek, I think we might sneak a draw.
Goodness me, look at this. This is like positivity. I'm going to say that Burnley are going to get a draw as well. I'm going to say I think it's going to be a goal fest. I think it's going to be 2-2. You never know. It'll be exciting. Let us know what your score predictions are, listeners. You can tweet us at knownandever, or you can email us at podcast@knownandever.net. And if you have a score prediction, or even weirdly, the last time we had Tom on, Dave, we had
very precise ones.
Yeah, very precise scores. Who
and
was
very wrong
score?
ones.
Very wrong, yes. Who was going to score, whether it was going to be head, left foot, right foot. So, yeah, we had some specificity is the word, whatever.
You went through all that and it was 0-0.
Yeah, exactly. So we're not going to do that this week. We're not going to do that at all. But do let us know what you think the score prediction will be and drop us a line and see if you agree with our panellists, George and Dave. See if you think we've got any point of getting a draw. And what's the injuries like, actually, Dave, going into the game? I've just spotted that, actually. Have we had any injury updates yet?
We're not 100% sure. Because it's a Sunday game, they don't have the pre-match press conference till Friday, so we'll find out. Well, by the time this gets published, it may be out there. What they did do, though, they did have a training session, so they showed players training. And looking on there, we didn't see Ashley Barnes and we didn't see Jay Rodriguez. Chris Wood was in there, so striker-wise, we had Wood, Vidra and Mumbongo as the 3 strikers that were there. So we don't have 2 of our 4 main strikers in the picture by the looks of it. I'm guessing if they weren't there, they're not going to be in the picture for Sunday.
No, can I change my prediction away from 2-2, please? Will we score 2 goals before the end of the season? That is the question. Okay, well, we'll have to wait and see then, won't we, and see if we can get some injury news. But yeah, it's going to be a difficult game for sure.
Fantasy Premier League update.
Okay, so moving on to the second half of the preview show, Dave, and we are in game week 25 of the much coveted Known and Never Fantasy Premier League. Why don't you get straight in there, Dave, and give us some updates as to what happened with game week 25.
Yeah, we are back on track this week, and as such, we're able to bring an update for our No Nay Never Fantasy Premier League table. And here are the names of the top 5 managers after game week 25. We've got in 5th place a climber, LEH, up to 5th place with 1,621 points. We've got Gary Proctor as a non-mover in 4th with 1,632. Adam Dennett has gone down a place, 1,635. Sean Danaher has gone up to 2nd with 1,641. And then the leader, as non-mover at the top, is Charlie Binns with 1,659. Doing really well.
Yeah, they are doing really, really well. That's I just don't understand how these players are getting these points, Dave. I don't think I've ever been able to get these number of points. Why don't you put me out of my misery though on that line and let me know how Team None and Ever are doing?
Well, you've gone up a place. That's the good news. 233rd place now out of 240. You had 59 points last week, and you've broken that magic 1,000 points, Barry. You've got 1,023 points now.
I don't think I got over 1,000 points all last season, you know, Dave.
You must have done. Now, we can go back and check, because you can go on there. Not only can you see what points you got every week, you can also go back and see what you got in previous seasons. So maybe one week where we don't have an update to do because we're in the middle of a game week, we'll go back and dissect your weekly scores and previous seasons.
I shouldn't be as excited as I am about that, because I fear that won't turn out too well for me. So, sorry, how are the rest of the None and Ever team doing?
Well, the leader in our podcasters mini league is still Richard Steele. He's climbed up again. He had a really good week. He's up to 48th position overall now with 1,471 points. With 96 points, our Rich wasn't quite the highest scoring manager for last week. That accolade goes to Dermot Kinlin Martin with a very impressive 122 points. And
how are you doing, Dave? Are you like?
Sorry, I forgot to mention myself, didn't I? I'm up 12 places to 142nd. I got 76 points last week, so that puts me on 1,338 in the middle.
I think you cheat. I'm pretty sure.
Cheat? How do you cheat? How?
I don't know, but I just don't know how you get as many points as you do. And I can't believe that in the second season of the None and Never preview show, you're still way ahead of me. Like next season, I'm going to finish above you. I state this categorically. What about the Kings of Game Week 25 then? How many do we have there? How many? Who are they? Well,
we've got a team of 11 players in a 4-5-1 formation. We had Jordan Pickford in goal. We had a back four of Dallas. We had James Tarkowski got in there, despite our match and our result. Getting a clean sheet obviously helped. He got 9 points. Must have got some bonus points as well.
Oh, yeah.
Fernandinho and Strike of Leeds were in there as well. We had a midfield of Barnes. That's Harvey Barnes, obviously. Rafinha of Leeds, Marcus Rashford and Bruno Fernandes. And Lookman of Fulham. And up front on his own was Benteke of Crystal Palace, who scored that late winner, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, of course. Oh, God, yeah, the Brighton game. Good old Benteke. That was a good result for us, I think, in the end, George. I think we were all trying to dissect, weren't we, in our panelist as to whether we thought it was going to be a draw or a win. But I think in the end, the Palace win was a good result.
Yeah, definitely. I always find it funny, the Palace and Brighton game, because Palace always seem to have the better than. And I'm not a particular fan of Brighton as a club. There's not much about them. So to see that they were absolutely battering them, and then of all people, Christian Benteke comes up with a smashing volley the last minute. Oh, it's nice and sweet, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Are you in our None and Ever league, George?
I am. I've just checked for the first time this season because I noticed a couple of weeks ago that my entire bench was injured. But I just don't like fiddling with it. I'll do it at the start of the season and then I'll leave it be. And I'm on 1,052 points. So if I'm correct, that means I am not below you, Natalie. So I'm not the bottom None and Never panelist.
What the hell? Are you kidding me? Is this some kind of setup?
So that's
you did your team at the beginning of the season, haven't checked. Your whole bench is injured and you've still got more points than me.
Obviously,
what the hell?
It's just tactical nous at the beginning of the season. I think that's what's really pulled it round for me.
I'm outraged. I'm genuine. That's triggered me like you wouldn't believe. Moving on then. Let's move on to our second new feature of the second half of this season, Dave, and that is the opposition 3 to watch based on their fantasy Premier League points. So who are we looking at ahead of the Spurs game?
The 3 highest point scorers for Spurs so far this season in the Fantasy Premier League, up to and including game week 25, are Heung-min Son. He's got 159 points. Harry Kane has got 155. And those two really are way, way ahead of all the rest. We've got Hugo Lloris is in third place on 94 points. So he's well behind the other two. So they might be 3 to look for on Sunday.
Yeah, or let's hope not. Let's hope that they all have a very quiet game and they don't score any goals. So where are we up to now in terms of game week 26? Are we going to be able to get in another update to the next preview show, Dave?
I don't think so. I think the way it's going to work out is we may have another sort of, well, not a blank week, but a week where we have to do something different other than the league updates and the Kings of Game Week. So we'll play it by ear. We'll see where we are when we're recording. But if we've not got an update to do, we'll see whether we can do something a little bit different like we did previously last time when we had a guest on, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, and don't be shafting me with no quizzes again because that was horrible. Did not like at all. Great. Well, obviously, do keep going, managers, and those of you who are getting towards the business end of the table, bear in mind that there is a title up for grabs here to be the winner of the No Nay Never League, which does come with a prize, not just a No Nay Never sticker, which is what we promised last season, and managed to do a little bit better than that. So do keep going because you never know. You may star on next season's podcast and you may get yourself a prize. So keep going.
Statman Dave's quiz question.
So we finish off this week's preview show, Dave, with, of course, the much-loved quiz question. What have you decided to set our listeners this week?
This week's quiz question is short and sweet. Prior to Spurs moving via Wembley to their new stadium, which player scored Burnley's last ever goal at White Hart Lane?
Now then, I was at this game. And I don't remember, but I'll probably be able to work it out by process of elimination. George, without giving the answer away, can you think of that? You must have been at that game as well.
Sorry, did you?
I think I remember.
Dave, did you say in what year they moved from White Hart Lane? In that
No,
question?
which player scored Burnley's last ever goal at White Hart Lane?
Oh, but
Yeah,
you don't.
that
You're
was
not. You're not
such a
providing when
sneaky
they
way.
You're not providing.
No, he's trying to get a clue out of you, Dave. Don't bite. Don't bite. Don't do it.
Because I have someone in mind, but it might be a bit early. That's all I'm saying.
You'll not get clues out of him, George. I try this every single week, and I've tried every single trick in the book to try and get clues out of him, and he is like a rock. He will not move. But yeah, no, I was at this game, and I don't think I can think off the top of my head, but I'll probably give it a good guess. So while we're thinking about that, Dave, and we will submit our answers off air, how do our listeners submit their answers, please?
They can either tweet us or preferably send us a direct message on Twitter. That's at No Nay Never. And if we get a DM, then no one else sees your answer. Email us podcast@nonaynever.net. And again, no one else will see that. Or you can reply on the post for this preview show on either the No Nay Never Facebook page or on YouTube. And we'll reveal the correct answer at the start of the next preview show.
Excellent. That is good stuff. Now, before we wrap up this week's preview show then, Dave, do we have any community news or any other business that we need to deal with? Any fixture changes or anything?
We have had fixture changes because the Everton game changed to the Sunday and now it's gone back to the Saturday, hasn't it? So that's a change. Twice in 2 weeks that game has changed. I think it was because of European games and one well, obviously not our European games, but other teams' European games. One of them had moved. I think they then got the Sunday slot, so we've gone back to the Saturday slot. But it's now the tea time kickoff. That's on the 14th of March. That's away at Everton. That's now the 5:30 Saturday kickoff. And then we're still waiting, I think, for the kickoff times for the games after that, which we're going into April for those. So we'll have to wait and see, because obviously we miss a week. We did have the Leicester game originally on the 20th of March, but that's come forward now. We're playing that on Wednesday.
Okay, that's good stuff. Well, I think that's all we've got time for then this week. We will wrap it up there. My thanks, as ever, go to all of the contributors to the preview show. This week we've got, and I'm going to try this, we're going to thank for their Fixture Flashback contribution, Jan Gedzielewski. Is that? Gedzielewski. Do we think that's right,
I think
Dave?
that's fairly close, yeah.
Jan Gedzielewski. Excellent. Well, thank you, Jan, for your fixture flashback. That was a superb entry. To Ricky from the Last Word on Spurs for the opposition view. And for those of you who want to listen to Dave's input, Dave did guest on the Last Word on Spurs podcast as well to give our opposition view. So do check that out to listen to what Dave had to say. Turf Moor Stadium announcer Dominic Walker for his specially recorded preview show announcements. To producer Matt for knitting all of this together. To George for joining us. George, how was your preview show debut?
Yeah, really good. But you've just got my brain ticking with this quiz question. So I've just been staring into the distance for the last 5 minutes, just pondering who it could be.
The Dave effect. Well, we have enjoyed having you on, George, and you are welcome to come back at any time. So thank you for coming on and being the only member of Team None and Ever to actually suck it up and talk about that West Brom game. So thank you very much. My final thanks, though, of course, go to the main man himself, the star of the previous show, that is Dave Statman Roberts, who puts in an extraordinary amount of work to put together this podcast, and it's just a joy to be on with him. So Dave, thank you very much. Final thanks go to you, the listener, for downloading and listening to this episode. Your support is very much appreciated, and we would not be here without you. The analysis show will be back probably Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, which will hopefully will have more to talk about from that Spurs game. And Dave and I will be back next Tuesday, I would have thought. Oh yeah, we'll be there before. Oh, that's true. Okay. So we've got the Liverpool game on Wednesday.
Leicester.
Leicester, yes, not Liverpool, Leicester on Wednesday. So the analysis show may then end up, we might do a double podcast for both of them on maybe Thursday, and Dave and I will be with you on Tuesday to preview the Leicester game. Let's do that. I think that's a good way to do it. So do keep an eye out on social media, and we will give you updates as we can as to when shows will be published. In the meantime, please take care of yourselves, look after yourselves and look after each other. If anybody is struggling at this time with lockdown seeming to be going on forever, if people are feeling isolated or just want a friendly chat with anybody, then the None and Ever lines are always open. You can tweet us at None and Ever, or you can drop us an email at podcast@noneandever.net. If you feel like you want to be a pen pal of None and Ever, drop us an email and we will reply. We usually do. Don't be alone. Do get in touch. The Clarets family will be here to support you. We will be back soon. This has been Natalie Bromley, and this has been the preview show brought to you by the None and Ever podcast.